I was all guys. Welcome back to the second of our double feature for Coliseum Forum. I am joined by an awesome writer, somebody I'm a big fan of, Dr. Alex Paknadel, and newcomer to comics, but an amazing artist in his own right, John Lee. We're here to talk about their new book from Vault Comics, Giga, something us here at Coliseum are extraordinarily excited about. I think if you've been around Coliseum long enough, at this point, you know, we tend to talk about the books we love, and Giga is definitely one of those upcoming titles that we are in love with. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
So I do want to give a kind of an upfront bullet point. Alex is broadcasting from a haunted castle in England. The internet there is not the best, so he may drop. If that happens, stick with us. We're still going to be talking to John, and Alex will make his way back in. But again, those haunted castles, not super great on the Wi-Fi connection. So
I'll come back in looking like really bedraggled with like straw in my beard and stuff.
Yeah.
I made it back. I did it, guys.
So while we were having a little bit of a technical issue, so it took us a little bit longer to get started. But one of the things we were talking about, and I kind of wanted to circle back to, is you're a doctor. You're like, I mean, your writing credit says Alex Paknadel, but you're Dr. Alex Paknadel.
Yeah, as I said, like not a proper one. I can't help you. Like, yeah, like I did a PhD in English literature, so it was on J.G. Ballard, you know, the novelist.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I did something on him and nostalgia. But it was so, like, you know, the guy did like High Rise and like Empire of the Sun. Like there's a bunch, like I probably like plagiarized a bunch of his stuff for my work. So I mean, it was useful in that respect. But yeah, like if you got a broken leg, like and I'm there, like I'll just squeal along with everybody else and run away.
So, like, you know, if you're on the tube in England,
but like, you know, I will throw up.
So, but if you're like on the tube or an airplane and the flight attendant's like, we need a doctor, you're not the guy that's gonna be like, hey, I'm a doctor. Oh no, not that kind of doctor.
No, I'll hide in the toilet and cry. Like I'll probably be doing that anyway, so like it'll just save time.
Right. You'll hear the call for a doctor, and you're like, "Oh, that's
yeah." Like I'm here anyway. Like I'm crying anyway. Like I might as well just stay. I'll probably be doing that
anyway. Yeah. We'll let the professionals handle it. And John, this is your first comic, right?
Yep. First like series. I had done like little things. Like I did an 8-pager in K-Rell's Ring Volume 3. And with Shannon Lentz and a bunch of different artists. And then before that, I just did a little 3-pager to be in the back of Ken Garing's Praxis on Image. And yeah, that's kind of my only comics cred. Before that, I was just doing kind of editorial and album covers and gig posters.
I want to tell you, I've read Giga 3 times now. Once when we first got to the solicit. The second time when we booked you guys that you guys were going to do Coliseum Forum, I was like, oh, I should reread that book. And then I read it again today just so I'd be up to date, because I'm sure you guys are subject matter experts on this book. So I wanted to kind of level the playing field. So let's jump right into it. So how do you two link up? Like, how do you guys get together to work on this book?
Can I take it, John?
Yeah, please.
First of all, yeah, it was like I found John on Twitter, actually. I think it was I'd asked some artist friends to kind of recommend some people, and I think I could be wrong. I think it was Grim Wilkins, but just kind of like, you know, who do you know who's kind of like who's really kind of striking. Like I want someone who can render this book in a very specific way, and John's name came up, and I just found it kind of immediately kind of arresting, you know, just this really kind of like like the feel that I wanted for the book. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've got my comps now, and you know, it's a slick package. But like, I wanted it to feel very kind of handmade, because I thought that was, you know, that was going to be, you know, like if you have a kind of, or like a robot book or a mech book, the expectation, I think, is that it's going to be you know, lots of sheen, you know, lots of lens flare, lots of kind of, you know, slick surfaces. And I kind of thought, no, like I want something that kind of feels a bit more kind of handmade. And John was kind of perfect for that, because he has the kind of, it's still a clean line style that John has, but it's got this kind of, it's got a kind of toothiness to it. You know what I mean? And I really kind of responded to that, and that, I think, you know, I mean, just to kind of go off there, you know, we found that, we kind of hooked up, and then you know, we started talking, and it was gestating for quite a while, and then, I mean, it really, I think, started kind of coming together at speed when I was out in LA for a show a couple of years ago, and you know, John kind of came up all the way from kind of Orange County, and we went and kind of had like tacos at, you know, like we visited this kind of taco truck on the edge of Koreatown at like 2 a.m, and just kind of like nerded out about it like till the wee hours. It was like, honestly, like hand to God, like one of the best nights of my life, man. Just like chilling out like in the middle of Los Angeles, like, you know, with my buddy, just having tacos and stuff, and just like, you know, I think I got back to my hotel room like 6 a.m. or something. You know, we just kind of just, you know, shot the shit like all night. It was great. But just realizing you've got like a rapport, you know, like not just a creative one.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna click, you know.
That's your bud.
John's now gonna go like, I hated that.
It made me drive up. From my perspective, that was totally different. John's now gonna go like. So when you approached John about the book, did you already kind of have a rough outline for Giga, or you were just looking to do your next book after like Arcadia and Assassin's Creed?
No, like I had it's evolved since, but I had a pretty good idea of the shape of the thing, but it was a weird one, you know, because it's like I mean, I've had it kind of top of mind. I wanted to do it for a long time, and it was difficult to kind of get a bite initially, and we cycled through like a couple publishers and everything. But I mean, like, man, like I mean, I remember kind of telling friends about it, you know, in like 2017. You know, it's you know, it's been kind of in the hopper for quite a while, and you know, in a weird way, I mean, it's not that much kind of newer a concept, I would say, than like Turncoat, say, which, you know, it's a book I did at Boom with Artyom Drakonov. But it, you know, since I started working with John, it's kind of taken on more of a life of its own. You know, the framework is still there, but the nuance, you know, as soon as I knew what, you know, as soon as I, you know, I thought I knew how to kind of play to John's strengths, it sort of changed in the telling. It became, you know, more of a kind of organic, it became more of a living thing. You know? Sorry, it sounds very pretentious, but you know what I mean.
No, I do. And one of the things you mentioned when you were talking about one of the reasons you approached John was because you needed to have a certain look. It needed to have these teeth. But I would also argue that in the story itself, the story has teeth. I'll be honest with you. Just when you look at the art on the cover, is very deceiving. When I first saw the solicitation, this was my idea, my thinking. I was like, oh, this is cool. Big robot book for all ages, right? And then I read the first couple pages and I was like, yeah, okay, big robot book for all ages. And then there's a turn in the book. And specifically when Evan gets back to his apartment after the little bit of a time jump. And I was just like, not an all ages book, but right up my alley, because I'm from New Jersey. That's kind of how we talk. So I was like, no, this is not an all ages book, but this is definitely going somewhere I like. So, for anybody, do you know what I'm talking about when you get back to the apartment?
Yeah.
It's different. Yeah. Okay.
Like that's supposed to be like, so by the way, like that's not supposed to be. That's supposed to be like a really human moment. It's supposed to kind of indicate like, like the levels of kind of deprivation that are kind of going on. It's it's not meant to be like salacious, you know what I mean? But yeah.
No. But the setup you get is and I would like you guys to give like the elevator pitch for Giga, because we're all very excited for Coliseum for Giga here at Coliseum Comics, but hearing it from you guys, like, you'll pitch it way better than I can because it's your book. That being said, the setup of that book, I'm like, okay, I'm with it. You know, there's some very religious overtones, and you've got these giant mechs, and this is really cool, and I like this. And then there's that shift in the story, and you're like, ooh, things have kind of gone to hell in this time jump. Things are not where they were when this book started 5 pages ago. With that said,
okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Yes. Sorry, I think I got a slight lag. I apologize. Yeah. Basically, the elevator pitch is, this is a world in which there's been a war between autonomous mechs, sometimes referred to as Giga, sometimes referred to as strike engines, and they fought this war for hundreds of years, destroyed every single human habitat. One day, for reasons unknown, they stopped fighting, and they just sat down and just sat in situ, and the majority of them never moved again. And nobody knows why. But with all the human cities destroyed, they lay dormant for centuries, and eventually, human beings, we were cold, and we just moved in, and the mechs that destroyed human cities ended up becoming human cities. And because, again, this is what we do, they also became objects of worship. So you have the society now where people live in their own gods. And there is a religious order that has kind of total control over this world, called the Order of the Red Relay. And they basically interpret the will of the Giga for the people. And they have their own holy text, which is called the Book of Assembly, which is like half engineering manual, like, half religious text. And our protagonist, Evan, he was a member of this order, but he was involved in a crime as a kid, peripherally involved, and as a result, he lost all of his privileges and was kind of exiled. We join him, 20 years later, where he's the lowest of the low. He's a scavenger. So what he does is he goes out into the Badlands, where there are these guys called dusters, who are kind of Luddites, who despise technology, and they'll kill you on sight if they see you, apparently. And he basically goes and sort of finds scrap and everything. And while he's out on one of these errands, he finds the corpse of a Giga. So he finds this giant mech, and it's basically, the whole book is, again, with these strong religious overtones that you mentioned, it's effectively it's a murder mystery. But because it's not just the death of a giant robot. These giant robots contain people, so there are thousands of people who've been killed as a result of this robot dying. But the crime that is at stake here, the crime that is rocking this world, is technically a deicide, because what he's found out in the woods is, for all intents and purposes, the body of a god. So a god has been killed. Who done it?
So there. Stories tell within the game in the first issue. As the book, I think I mentioned this book 3 years ago. Like, are we going to see big giant rope? Are we going to go to? Are we going to work this stuff?
Okay, sorry, I'm cutting out again.
Same
John?
here. Yeah, same here. I that just got a little robo-y from Billy's feed. Couldn't really piece together the question. Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, hi, sorry about that, fellas.
Oh, look, Dr. Alex Paknadel is now interviewing me and you, Billy.
It works for me.
Sorry, could we grab that again?
Yeah, so what I was saying before I lost you guys there, just within the first issue of Giga, there are so many stories you guys can tell. I mean, we do have the big murder mystery for the deicide, which I'm so happy you said that word, because I love that word and it made my whole day. But I mean, are we going to like explore like more of the origins of the Giga, or are we going to? I mean, I like the face you made there. So
Yeah.
but I mean, are we going to like
good poker face?
I mean, how deep are we dwelling into this universe within like the first 6 or so issues?
Well, I mean, there may only be 5 issues. I mean, it's sales dependent. We have a commitment for 5. But I mean, first issue's done pretty well, so like it's looking good. God, I need to touch every wooden thing in my immediate vicinity. But no, like we got a definite ending in mind, and you're gonna find out a little bit more. I mean, I will say this, right? Like a lot of it, research wise, and I'm gonna let John kind of jump in on some of this stuff, I think, because I'm dominating this, but a lot of it's been directly inspired. I will say this, like I did a lot of reading around the Protestant Reformation, like that led a lot of this. So yeah, if people are kind of familiar with kind of Martin Luther and the Borgias and the Dimitis, then yeah, they'll get an idea of where this might be headed.
Okay. No, I think that's a really good place to leave off, because something was announced today about your book, which I was really excited to read, because again, I'm a big fan of the book. You guys are going to second printing already. It's not even out yet. Something was announced.
Bonkers.
Wild, right?
That's crazy. That means they did their print run based on the numbers we thought, the comic shops thought they would need, and then they were like, oh, we still need more of this, which is, I mean, yeah, I mean, John, does that mean you have to go back now? You have to draw another cover for another number one?
Thankfully, no. Tim whipped up a great second printing cover that I think a lot of people are hyped on, and I just found out today that there's going to be a foil edition of that one too. So super rad. Yeah, the article said it. Unless I read it wrong. But the article said that there would be the $3.99 edition. That's the regular cover with the stars in the background, and then the other one that would be available would be $9.99, and that would be a foil cover, a foil edition of that one. So
you know what we need, bro? You know what we need? We need spot gloss, right? Check it out. Someone said to me a while ago, right? Spot gloss is for closers.
Ooh.
Yeah, spot gloss is for closers. You heard it here
first. I
need you
to elaborate. I just need that on a T-shirt.
No, man. Like, no, you get a matte cover, you're doing pretty well. Like, you get a shiny cover, you're doing pretty well. You get spot gloss, you're somebody.
What?
I've always wanted spot
gloss. Fact.
I don't know what spot glass is.
It's like you have a matte cover, but like a little bit of it's glossy. Like the top,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's when you know you're loved.
Full nerd boner.
Yeah.
Got it.
When spot gloss comes.
Yeah. Spot gloss is for closers.
So, I mean, those are some very, very nice covers when they're done well. So, John, I have to ask. You guys are committed to 5 issues for the first run of Giga. Mm-hmm. How far through drawing that are you?
Ooh.
John, I have to ask.
Sorry, I was trying to think of a percentage, and I don't know math or numbers. But we're in the middle of 3 right now. We're full steam ahead on 3 right now.
So I've asked this. We've had a few artists on, and I've asked them, and this seems to be the general consensus. Are you about a page a day guy?
Full steam ahead on. No. I tried to. Yeah. No. It's I don't even know how many days each pages take. You know what I mean? Because and I've never understood that either. You know what I mean? Like, because then you got to thumbnail the whole thing, then you got to pencil the whole thing, and then you start inking the whole thing. So exactly what part is part of one day? You know what I mean? So like I've never really understood, like, as far as inking pages, just inking pages. Like, I could, good days you can get 2 pages ish, depending on what it is. I feel like I don't know. It's so hard to establish a rate when I'm still under my first 100 career pages. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So, And I think with that one page, I think that's just pencils, right? Like I think pencils, boom, like inking as a whole, that doesn't count towards. I mean, it does inking in its own right as an an art form, but I think just pencils is like that. You know what I mean?
Okay. I think on a good day, I can get a page a day, but then some pages are really, some of these robots are really big.
Yeah, and that's the thing I wanted to ask you next was like,
yeah,
the design of the robots. Like, how did you guys come up with that? Were you guys like, did you grab like old kaiju movies from like Japan or like Super Sentai movies, or like where do you guys come up with designs for some of these robots? Because I'll be honest, some of them are cool enough that I want to live there.
Thank you. That's honestly, I think Alex and I had a lot of similar influences as far as Mexico, and there was a time when we were first. I remember when we were first drafting the ideas of the Gigas, and being kind of new to the game, you're wanting to use the opportunity to like kind of establish a style, and there was a point where I kind of caught myself trying so hard to be original that I was kind of forgetting how to be myself. And I believe it was Alex and our editor Adrian when they started deciding that, or kind of suggesting that there should be a dichotomy of the Gigas, different roles in the war and different kind of jobs for each Giga.
Okay.
I think at that point we had decided that, or I was kind of coming to Alex about it, of that instead of trying to kind of break the wheel, use each Giga as kind of a way to pull from all of the influences, from Neon Genesis to Gundam to Patlabor to just about everything in the book, and kind of just make, like, I feel like some Gigas are completely Gundam and then some Gigas are completely Metal Gear Solid. So, I don't think and other than that, I'm just trying to make something that makes sense and hits, and you can look at it and think, oh yeah, we could live in that, and they could activate.
We had this loose thing that, like, because one of the things that we, when we first started, we were both looking at a lot of kind of brutalist architecture, kind of like Eastern European and Soviet kind of social housing. And also like a lot of kind of projects in the US as well, that kind of very utilitarian graffiti kind of strewn, because we wanted a bunch of that, because we wanted it sort of there to be a definite kind of class stratification, but that would also be based on roles, right? So like the idea is that when the war ended, like a lot of the Giga kind of clustered together in terms of their function. So like artillery Giga, the big kind of tanky guys would kind of like sit down, and they'd all just like sit cross-legged and everything. And then like you have like, for all intents and purposes, and I use the term advisedly, like a slum. So, there are references in the first issue to the Claymore Collective. And the Claymore Collective is like, that's like the hard line, right? So like everything, like the idea is that basically everything north of like the Claymore Collective is kind of a shithole, because it's all the Giga that kind of got like really badly damaged, and like Evan, like the protagonist, like he lives in one, and like its jaws hanging off and stuff. Whereas like you get downtown, and there's these very well maintained kind of ecclesiastical Giga that are like cathedrals, and so like that first splash page that you get in issue 1. Right. One of the things that John and I worked on and kept coming back to with Roche, our colorist, was that we wanted, when they're standing inside the head and they're looking at kind of the hieroglyphics, right, that the light streaming in through the Giga's eyes would be like light through a stained glass window, because we wanted it to look, like a sort of like a cathedral. But that's like in the really kind of upmarket bit,
Right.
Yeah.
No, so let me ask you this: if I don't know if you guys meant to kind of divulge that, but that was something I didn't. I'm a forever a 12-year-old, right? If I see a giant robot, I'm just like, oh my god, it's a giant robot. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I don't know if I took the time to like really kind of look at them, but if when issue 1 comes out, if you look at the design of the robots that you guys came up with, like, do you think you could determine like, okay, this is like an artillery guy, this was like a maybe a medic, or this guy was like an infantry guy?
I think so. Like that was the idea. I mean, yeah, I mean, we're not gonna. I don't think we'll. You know, we didn't sort of.
We don't label them.
Yeah, we didn't do a map.
Right.
You know what I mean? We didn't do like a Middle Earth
Right.
map, but
Yeah.
like we certainly had an idea of what was what. Yeah, and that there are kind of these squat guys that are kind of very much, you know, these will be the guys at the back with like, you know, sort of all the kind of you know, all the kind of missile launchers and everything, but they're all kind of spent now. But like that's like, yeah, that's the like there are these references throughout, as I said, to like, you know, it's like all these like assholes from the kind of Claymore Collective, because they're like, that's the really kind of rough part of town, but that they were like all the artillery mech. Yeah.
Okay. See, again, like I said, I'm 12-year-old, so I see a big robot, I'm just like, this is great. And then like that's as far as my relationship.
But dude, that's the cool thing, man. Like so much of this is kind of I feel like it's sort of you know, everything that we're doing, because it's in this kind of like envelope, everyone's kind of, not everyone, you know, but like a lot of people seem to have kind of really taken to it because it's in this envelope. Even though what we're doing is, you know, there's politics in there, there's religion in there, there's, you know, social tensions in there, there's all this kind of stuff, but like it feels like you know, you know, and I think like all good stories do this, right? Like it's the spoonful of sugar, you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, the mechs are absolutely integral, and we've given it a lot of thought, but it's allowed us to kind of, it's a delivery system that's allowed us to kind of, you know, put in other stuff and other kind of nuances and complexities, you know.
And I think when I said like there's like 3 stories that could happen just in the first issue of Giga, that I mean that's exactly it, right? Like there you have this backdrop of this giant robot war that happened at some point, and then you've got this entire religious sect, and then you've got these people who live in this slum essentially, and like you could follow any of those 3 stories anywhere, and I think there's fun to be had there, but we're focusing in on Evan, who is, like you mentioned, he was originally part of this religious order. He now kind of inhabits the slum as a scavenger. How much different is where we're at with issue 1 than before you, like when you first came up with this idea before you met John? How different is it now than it was then?
Pretty different, in as much as, you know, and it was honestly, it was like a space issue more than anything. It was like I tend to I'd written like a whole like a scene where like Evan like gets the crap kicked out of him effectively, like out in the forest and stuff. And it exists, like those were part of our pitch pages, you know, John drew them, but like we yanked them out in the end because it just wasn't working. Kind of basically we were trying to kind of build tension, and it just disrupted it too much, even though I think it filled in a lot of blanks. But one of the things that I found, actually looking back at that scene, and I mean, I don't know, maybe if we get a nice trade, I'll kind of, you know, we'll whack them in as extras. That might be a cool thing, I don't know. Sure. But if we get the opportunity, I mean, it'd be a nice sort of, be an interesting sort of curio, if nothing else. But one of the things that I found is that a lot of the dialogue in that scene was very kind of expositional. So it was that sort of, that sort of, you know, like when like Spider-Man's like getting, you know, when the Vulture's kicking the crap out of Spider-Man, he's like, I got to get these groceries home for Aunt May. And you're like, people don't do that in a fight. Right. Like it was one of those, you know, whereas like they're having a fight, but they're also kind of telling you the plot. So, like I kind of looked at it, I was like, maybe that can go. And it's funny, man. Like I was really nervous about, because with these things, it's you know, with world building, I think there's always this temptation. I mean, I kind of mentioned it earlier on, but there's always a sort of an attendant temptation to almost like to either provide or have it exist as a map. But you know, I love world building. Everything I've done really is about world building, really. I'm obsessed with place, but if all you're doing, you know, I mean, and I do kind of obsess over like, well, what do they do for money? You know, how does groceries work? You know, all that sort of stuff. Like I love kind of fixating on that sort of stuff, but really, like I think if you dwell too long on any of that, and you don't, at least at some point, just join someone and inhabit them and be them and just be present for the story and just experience it with them and trust that the reader's going to catch up. If you don't do that, I think you're straying more. And by the way, I'm not using this like pejoratively at all. It's just about sort of staying in the lane. I think you risk it turning into like an RPG. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
At some point, I think you just have to like trust the reader to just kind of go with it and just go, look, you will trust us, like you will kind of tune in, because like I had a whole thing before, like where it's like weeks before it was going to go to print. Like I rang up Adrian frantically and I was like, oh shit, like do we need to do like a crawl? You know what I mean? I was like, do we need like do we need a page of just like, in a world? And he was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you try and do that, I will kill you. But I was just super nervous that it was going to be, that we were going to be dropping people in at the deep end. But turns out people quite like being dropped in at the deep end,
No, I agree. I mean, I think inhabiting that world, like entering that world of Giga, right? Reading this book, we'll use your book as an example. Nobody wants to be hand-fed every single detail. The ambiguity, like that gives us the opportunity to like fill it in. Like you mentioned, like how do they get groceries? How do they pay for stuff? Things like that. Like as a fan, somebody reading this material, that's the fun stuff to fill in myself, right? Like that's what I get to like, when me and my friends are talking about a comic we read and there's ambiguity in the story, that's the fun stuff to fill in together. Like, well, what do you think that was? Like why, or how do you think they do this? Like just these normal functions of life that you guys as the story creators, John as the artist and Alex as the writer, you're too Hollywood for that. You don't have time to fill that stuff in. Let us handle that on the back end, right? That's part of the fun of engaging with this sort of material.
I've never been described as Hollywood before, but I really appreciate it.
You made
Listen,
it.
you guys got a second printing and a foil cover today. Like, you're Hollywood now. Also, our Coliseum forum just before you was with Kieran Gillen, and Kieran Gillen described you as a delight, Alex. So I don't know if you heard that, but
I did not. But that's lovely. Oh, sorry, that sounds really no. Kieran's amazing, man. Like he no, but he's one of those. There are creators who like throw the ladder down, and then there are creators who don't. And like I feel very strongly that we're such a small community that if you don't throw the ladder down, like what are you doing really?
Right.
It's like nobody benefits if it's like a protectionist racket,
Right.
But right. Kieran's always been, and like habitually, man, like, and also not even before he blew up, Kieran was trying to help everybody. And so yeah, I mean, so I don't really know where I'm going with that other than to sort of reciprocate it, but like he's a real one. Kieran's a real one. Like, he's the real deal. I like him a lot.
Yeah, no, he was actually pretty excited to hear that we were doing our next forum with you right after him. So I wanted to pass that on. But here's one thing I did talk to him about that I want to talk to you about, and John as well, because I think growing up with comics for John and I, they're sort of ubiquitous here in the United States, whereas like I don't think they have the same ubiquity. Is ubiquity a word? You're the English doctor. I
can fix English.
Yeah, I don't think it has the same ubiquity as in the UK, which is weird because so many talented creators come out of those islands. Like, I mean, there are certified legends that come from the UK. So with you guys not having the same kind of access to the comic books, like me and John, for example, like how do you, for example, get into comics as a kid, or even as an adult if you didn't?
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know what you've heard, but like we do have a pretty vibrant kind of comics culture. I mean, it's different. It's quite different in the sense, like I mean, ours is kind of we have a lot of kind of screwball stuff,
right?
More like Dennis the Menace, right? So like we've got comics like the Beano and the Dandy,
right,
which are like anthology stuff, but it's like it's kid stuff, and they're just great. We also have an adult comic which is just really foul called Viz. Not to be confused with Viz Publisher, but we have a comic anthology called Viz, which has strips like Nobby's Piles, which is about a guy whose adventures with his hemorrhoids. What are some of the Sid the Sexist? I mean, that kind of takes care of itself. Self-explanatory. And like the Drunken Bakers. I mean, it's just awesome. David Bowie was a huge fan of his. But I mean, of course, the archetypal comic, ours is 2000 AD. 2000 AD
Right,
is,
for sure.
that's where most people kind of cut their teeth. I didn't, Kieran didn't, but Cy Spurrier started out at 2000 AD. Al Ewing, Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman. They all kind of cut their teeth on 2000 AD. And what's interesting, I think, about 2000 AD is that it's because it's hyper compressed storytelling, right? It's like 8 pages and you're out of it, right?
Right.
What those guys can do with space is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, like, you remember like what Al did in his run on Ultimates, which I just adore, right? But he was doing like cosmic Marvel, like we've never seen cosmic Marvel, right? It just this kind of breathtaking, like irrepressible bounty of ideas, like 3 amazing ideas per page. Same, Grant Morrison cut type stuff. That all comes from 2000 AD. That's like because you've got 8 pages and you're trying to kind of blow someone's hair back.
Right.
So all of the guys who kind of came up through that system have that kind of facility to just blow your head, and of course when they get 20 pages or 22 pages, they're like, oh my god, this is luxury. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to kick back and take
right.
Whereas the rest of us are just like, oh my god, how am I going to fit this in? It's
there's like leg room there.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's a funny one. But I mean, in terms of like how I got it, like honestly, I'm second generation, because like we did have like specialty stores. The first specialty stores like Dark They Were in Goldeneye, the Forbidden Planet, opened up in the early 70s. And like my dad was a huge Marvel zombie, so like I mean, an anecdote I like is that he managed to get hold of a copy of Giant Size X-Men 1 back in the day, and like paid like well over the odds for it, because very few found their way into the UK. And he was cycling back, like he's bicycling back home from school with this thing in his backpack, and he got hit by a car. Sorry. And he twisted in midair, so like his body would absorb the impact rather than the comic book. So like he now has this like copy of Giant Size X-Men 1 that's like fine, but he was like bruised, lying kind of in the road, like. It's kind of mad, but like that's the environment I grew up in. So like I learned to read with like Marvel Treasury editions, like Howard the Duck, like Avengers Wedding Special. Like that was like how my dad taught me to read.
That's amazing. And I apologize in advance. I didn't mean it like, oh, Britain doesn't have comics. You guys don't even know what a comic book is. How did you even write this?
Oh no, we are a shithole. It's fine. We're still a shithole. It's
that was definitely not the implication.
No, it's just fun. We totally are. We 100% are.
No, I meant. But what I think the what I was really trying to ask was like, if you look at comics in North America specifically, right? Like there is this very vibrant. I mean, it's more ubiquitous here than I would say like the Avengers and Spider-Man, and maybe not so much anymore, but definitely in the 70s, the 80s, things like that. I've talked to a lot of older British comics collectors that are like, yeah, occasionally we got like weird reprints from the Marvel stuff, but it wasn't like we were going to get a pull list every week, right? And unless you were lucky enough to live towards where like one of the specialty shops had opened up at that point. So yeah, I apologize, Britain. You guys do have some really great comics. 2000 AD, it's on my bucket list. I eventually, this is a true story, I want to read every issue of 2000 AD before I die. So yeah, I apologize. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I get it. So, now, John, same question for you. How do you get into comics? Like, what's your first introduction to like, oh, hey, there's this sequential art form thing and it's kind of cool. Maybe I could do that when I grow up.
Yeah, really on that second part, really later. I didn't start drawing until I was 22, but I think the earliest introduction was either a group of Japanese foreign exchange students at my high school that were super into manga, and they got me into manga, and then also my cousins actually, they got me into Neon Genesis. They got me into, I think one of the first mangas they gave me was like Death Note or something like that. And so yeah, my origin story is a little weird. I think now that I look back and I connect some of the dots, it seems like comics has kind of always been there, but not something I actually really gave into until, you know, around 23, 24, when I was really getting into drawing. And yeah, I just Mobius was huge for me, getting like as a 22-year-old, finding out who Mobius was. And he kind of, you know, because I got into drawing because I wanted to do more fine art and painting and stuff like that. And then I saw Mobius, and I saw somebody that straddled that line very eloquently. He was doing sequential work, and he was doing sequential work in a way that I never knew sequential work like that existed, you know. And now that I study the tapes, if you will, I see that it's kind of been, it's been, everything's been there if you're willing to look for it, you know. But Mobius kind of really showed me that I could do something that felt like fine art, but also tell a story, you know, and something more than just imply a narrative, and really, you know, use the craft to be able to tell a story with someone. And so yeah, everything kind of came really late, but once it started, I think it was like 2014, WonderCon in Anaheim. There was just something about that place, and I don't even think I knew it at the time at 22. I think I was just free on a Sunday, and I go, and I'm seeing comic pages for the first time in the size that they are, and I'm seeing the biggest thing. I think growing up in California, there's this thing I always refer to as California cool, where, like, you know, even if it's cool, you're kind of always hanging out by the door with your hands in the pockets, being ready to be the first person out of the room. And that was something I didn't see in comics. I saw people that wanted to be inspired, that wanted to give things a chance, that wanted to feel things and not just feel things and act like they didn't, you know, had some kind of poker face on. So something about WonderCon, and something about being at my first comic convention, and something about Mobius, kind of everything started swirling in. And I think as I get older, I just keep leaning more into myself and more into my interest, no matter how weird or obscure, or not weird or obscure, I'm not into that weird things, but just very different fields of things, you know what I mean? Absolutely. Like, you know, earlier you asked about like the influence of how we drew the Gigas, and like during the time of, you know, I was into cars as a kid, then I found out about money, then I got less into cars, and then
Dude, money can get you cars. Like, it's not, they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. But yeah,
cars, money. What do I? Oh. What do I do?
But you know, I started getting into cars a little more, and just kind of like how engines work and stuff with my group of buddies, and that influenced so much of Giga in real time right now, even with what I'm drawing today. You know what I mean? Of engine mounts and vents, how to make things look more aggressive, how to make things look less aggressive. You know what I mean? Like, so kind of like I like, this book has allowed me to pull from like every little corner of every little interest I've ever had, you know, so far, you know what I mean? So it's it's been weird. But yeah, as far as how I got into comics, very it was like a pinch toes, and once I found it, I just wanted nothing else.
I mean, guys, first of all, I would like to point out that it is not even Thursday anymore for Alex. It is now firmly Friday morning for him. So I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. Giga, get it on. You can pick it up at any local comic shop. What's our release date on that?
28th.
28th. So next Wednesday is going to be awesome for comics. There's a lot of good stuff coming out, including Giga. So guys,
well, there's also you got Blue and Green as well from Ram V and Anand RK. Sorry, I got a pigeon online, but there's a new image graphic novel coming out from I'm in a writer's studio called White Noise, and Ram's got an OGN coming out next week. It's like a jazz horror thing that's gonna just. I described it earlier on as like a mic drop from low orbit. It's gonna wreck shop, man. It's amazing.
I think they have spot gloss as well on that book.
Spot gloss is for closers, man.
Spot gloss is for closers.
It's gonna wreck shop, man. It's amazing.
But guys, again, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Please, anytime you guys you're working on something, if you want to swing back through Coliseum Forum, we'd love to have you. Alex, we're gonna let you go to bed since it is now Friday morning for you.
I'm good. May I be cheeky and plug another thing? Is that cool?
Yeah, plug whatever you want.
I apologize. If anyone's interested, like I have an Appalachian horror book coming out through TKO on November 9 called Red Fork, which is very outside my comfort zone. Like I've never written horror before. I'm also like, I've written something, set in West Virginia. And as you can tell, like I am not from West Virginia. But like I'm super proud of it. I really hope people check it out. It's called Red Fork.
It's amazing.
Sorry.
I think pre-orders are still open, right, Alex?
Sorry?
Pre-orders are still open for Red Fork, yeah?
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Pre-order.
Yeah. And it comes out in like a binge thing. It's like you can get it in trade or in like a box set of all 6 issues at the same time. There was same series like Sentient that Jeff Lemire did with Gabriel Walter last year.
I think Garth Ennis had a book over there too. I want to give TKO a shout out since you brought TKO up. It's something we do carry in our stores. If you guys aren't familiar with TKO, they're a publisher, and one of the things that they do is they release everything at once. As Alex pointed out, you can either get it as a collection or as a graphic novel day one, and then you have your story, you're in and out. The thing that TKO got my attention with, the thing I think was really, really special that they did during the pandemic when all the comic book shops were forced to shut down, if you ordered books through them, so say you wanted to get that Jeff Lemire book or the Garth Ennis book, or I mean, they have a really super talented stable over there. When you did your order, you could put in who your LCS was, and they sent a percentage of the book to your LCS. And we actually got a few checks from that, and I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. So not only does TKO work with quality creators, obviously Alex, for example, they are just a really, really great publisher in terms of some of their practices as well. So if you like Alex and you are interested, we will be able to get Red Fork for you, and I would strongly recommend that, even though we're talking about Giga today.
Thank you, brother.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in for our Coliseum Forum double feature. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did, and we will see you guys soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in for